Hello everyone, I'm Heather and this is Heather Travels, which is a channel all about travel. If that's something that interests you, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel. It is a very dark and gloomy gray day today, which is somewhat appropriate for the relatively somber tone of today's video topic. In today's video, I'm going to share with you my 3 personal biggest travel regrets. All right, the first one is easy. This is a very big travel regret that still pains me to this day. I was very upset about this at the time. I'm still very upset about it. It's something I'm really disappointed that I did not get to do. Okay, my number 1 travel regret was in, I think it was 1992. I was a student at a small private college and I heard about Semester at Sea. Now the Semester at Sea program is a still ongoing program, but it's changed quite a bit from what it was like when I applied for it when I want to say I was a sophomore in college. It's much bigger now. It involves multiple universities and schools of higher education. I think they're using a much bigger ship than they did at the time, and it has multiple programs, and it doesn't run exactly the way it did when I applied for it. But it is still a program that's out there, so if you have a high schooler or a college student that's interested in this after I talk about it, definitely check out Semester at Sea on their website because they have voyages going every fall and spring semester all the time. But back when I applied for it, it was run by NYU, New York University, and it was much smaller and it was a pretty competitive program. Nowadays, it's about 105 days, so about the length of a semester, and they go to 10 to 12 countries. At the time I applied for it, it was a semester long, but they literally circumnavigated the entire globe. And I can't remember how many different countries we would have visited, but they changed the itinerary every year. And part of the application process was that you had to write an essay about one of the countries that they were going to be visiting that year, why you wanted to visit it, and what you wanted to learn about it when you were there. I submitted an application. I told my son Ben, I can still remember exactly where I was sitting, the computer I was sitting at, in the little computer lab in the basement of my dorm at college, where I was sitting when I typed up my essay for this application. And at the time, one of the places they were going to be visiting was Hong Kong. And Hong Kong at the time was still a British colony. And later in the 90s, I can't remember, somebody remind me, I want to say it was 1999, but I'm not positive. Hong Kong was going to be returned to China by the United Kingdom. So the British were going to be returning control of Hong Kong to the Chinese. And this journey that I would have gone on was going to be visiting Hong Kong, among many other places, before that transition happened. And I wrote my essay about visiting Hong Kong and how I was very interested to experience it while it was still a British colony, and then hopefully go back again later after it was returned to the Chinese and compare and see how it changed and things like that. And part of the reason I was so interested in that for my essay and visiting there was at the time my roommate in college was from China. And she actually ended up staying in the United States. She did not return to China after college. She went to UC Berkeley for her master's degree. Then she went to Columbia University in New York City for her PhD. And then she got a postdoctorate, and she works in the sciences, and she ended up marrying a guy from New York City and had at least one child, I know, before we lost touch. I visited her both in California when she was out there and in New York City when she was there. I learned a lot from her about China and Chinese culture and just Asia in general. And so it was very much an interest of mine at the time, and I wanted to learn more about it and visit. And so that was what I chose to focus my essay on. And I was accepted. I was accepted to the Semester at Sea program through NYU. And I was very excited because, like I said, at the time it was quite a competitive program. And I think I was accepted for, was it spring of 93, or I'm not sure, 92 or 93, somewhere in there. I was very psyched about this. I was really excited about this program. I was so excited that I was going to get to go all the way around the globe, spent an entire semester You know, your classes were kind of on board the ship. It was kind of a small cruise ship is what they use. And I was really, really excited about this. And this was before, keep in mind, this was before I had ever taken a cruise. But this just kind of goes to show how my love of the ocean and traveling by sea, how far back that extends and how long ago my interest in that started. I know now, and I think I probably even knew then, but maybe didn't have enough understanding of it, that there was ways to get financial aid for this, that some of my federal financial aid that I got already for college would have covered it, and that there were additional like scholarship programs and things I could have applied for. But I don't know if I didn't know that at the time or I didn't explain it well enough. But when I took my acceptance to my dad to say, hey Dad, I got into semester at sea, I'm so excited, he took one look at the price and was like, no, you can't do that, we can't afford that. And he just completely shut me down immediately. And I don't know if I just didn't argue with him or I didn't explain it or what. My dad owned his own business for my entire growing up years. And it was a family business that my grandfather had started. And it was very up and down, you know. So sometimes we had a lot of money and we would go on these expensive trips and we would do all these things and stuff like that. And it seemed like we could buy whatever we wanted. And then other times we were really poor and I had to use the little tickets that you had to tear off to get my free and reduced lunch, and which was very embarrassing and everything. And so it was definitely a roller coaster for our family financially when I was growing up. And I was telling Ben just this morning that I think that maybe the timing of when I brought it to him was bad and was in one of those down times. And he was just like, anything that cost that much money, he wasn't even going to consider or talk about. And I'm just devastated that I didn't get to do that, because that would have been an amazing once in a lifetime experience. I mean, I don't like saying once in a lifetime with travel very often, but in this particular case, that would have been literally a once in a lifetime experience. And I'm very angry with my dad that I didn't get to do that. And I'm also very upset with myself that I didn't, you know, learn more about it and like prepare a presentation or whatever, something to like take to him to argue, like, look, Dad, no, I can get this financial aid or whatever, that I didn't research it more and pursue it. I really kind of think I was under a pretty tight time deadline though. I don't think I had very long between when I was accepted and when you had to pay like the deposit and commit to the program or whatever. Because obviously there's a lot of logistical challenges in taking college students on a ship all the way around the world and visiting, you know, however many countries. So that would have been a trick. But I mean, I know I had a passport. I had already done a study abroad in Ireland at that point. I don't remember enough details, but I just remember that I was very, very upset that I did not get to do that. And I am still really upset that I did not get to do that. And it's one of my biggest regrets, not only travel regrets, but biggest regrets in life. Okay, the second biggest regret I have is somewhat related. After I did not get to do the semester at sea program, I did end up doing a study abroad in London in the fall term of 1993 through my college. So it was probably more financially doable because I was getting the grants and things I got from my college to be able to go on that program. And it was professors from my own college that went over to London with us. And that was a fantastic experience. That was a really great experience. At the time, I was an art history major. And when I went to London, my advisor actually was the main professor that went with us. In fact, he talked me out of going the previous semester when I was originally supposed to go with a different professor. And he said, no, wait, because I'm going to be the professor that's going over there in the fall. So wait and go with me. And so that's what I ended up doing. The next fall, he had it all figured out for me because my emphasis in my art history major was medieval and Renaissance. And he was the medieval and Renaissance professor. And so London, we were very much focused on the medieval. And then the next fall, I was supposed to go on our college's program to Florence, Italy, and do another study abroad the fall of the next year, so the fall of 94, in Florence, Italy. And I feel like I was all accepted to it and everything too. And at the time, I really had wanted to work like in a museum or something. I wanted to do something with art and everything. And I don't think I realized how much I probably would have been very happy living in Europe. At the time when I was a medieval and Renaissance emphasis art history major, I realized at some point I have no idea what I'm going to do with this, and there's no medieval or Renaissance art outside of museums, obviously, in the United States, because the United States isn't that old. And so it occurred to me that if I was going to be able to do any kind of career with that, I was going to have to live in Europe, probably. And at the time, I don't think I was as keen on that, but now I kind of wish I had done that, because I would definitely like to live in Europe. Stupid me. This one was completely 100% my own fault. And this again shows how a travel regret can end up being a major life regret. The small private college that I attended, I'd like to point out too that my two oldest children now have both also gone to small private colleges. Don't rule out small private colleges, folks. They might have a higher price tag initially, but they also have way more money, and they heap financial aid and grants on underprivileged kids like me and my kids. Okay, so when you don't have a lot of money to go to college, you want to be looking at those small private colleges, because they will give you so much more in grant, which is free money that you never have to pay back, and no student loans, than any state school or public school that you're going to go to. Trust me on this, okay? I had zero in student loan from the college that I was originally at. And I stupidly, when I came back from London, was homesick, which is totally understandable. I had just spent, the whole fall in London. It was Christmas time when I came home, and I just, I missed home and I missed my family and stuff. And I had met a guy back here, and which ended up being nothing, and I wanted to be with him, and blah, 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 stupid, dumb, young thought process. And I came back and transferred to the big state university near where I live. And that was the dumbest thing I ever did. Well, no, it wasn't, but it was one of the dumbest things I ever did. Because not only did I then set myself way back as far as completing college, I also traded in that wonderful financial situation I was in at my original college, where I had no student loan, where everything was paid for with grant and work study. And I took on so many student loans at the state university that I transferred to, because after I got my first college degree there, I also went back and got a second degree in education to become a teacher and got more student loan from that. And I still am saddled with those student loans. So that was a terrible, terrible move. I didn't have anybody to really advise me. My parents didn't well, my mom did, but my dad never had student loans. And he went to the same school, and so did my mom. And so they were all happy I was going to the same place they had gone to, because they thought that was great. And I just don't think they really thought about the long-term consequences of that transfer. If I could turn back time, I would go back to 1993, the end of 1993, and tell myself, stay where you are, go home for Christmas break, and then go back to school and finish. And go to Italy in the fall of 94 like you're supposed to, because I never got to go to Italy. I have still never been to Italy. I did not get to do that program in Florence, which would have been an amazing program studying, Renaissance paintings and sculpture and architecture, which are amazing. And I didn't get to do that. And so that is my second biggest travel regret, and also a very, very big life regret. Third biggest travel regret, this one involves my kids. And this one, unfortunately, as much as it saddens me, was really kind of beyond my control. Okay, and it's kind of two parts. Well, it's kind of three parts, actually. The first part is, when Andrew was 10 years old, my oldest, I was married. We had just Megan, who was 2-3 years old. Ben wasn't born yet. And we decided to take Andrew to London. Now, the idea behind this was, we thought it would be cool to take each of our kids to Europe, wherever they wanted to go in Europe, when they were 10 years old, as a cool introduction to international travel for each kid. And this would be a one-on-one trip with mom and dad. You got to go to Europe and stuff like that. Now, two things I kind of regret about that trip. We did do that trip, and it was a completely awesome trip, and I'm really glad I got to do that with Andrew. Number one, knowing what I know now, and the differences in the way my ex-husband and I approached travel and prioritized it and things like that. And the way he was on that trip, and also just the fact that we ended up getting divorced just a few years later. So by the time the younger two kids were 10, he was long gone. I wish that I had instead said, I'm going to take each of my kids on a trip to Europe when they're 10. Then I could have started it as a tradition, that Andrew and I went on a trip, and then Megan and I went on a trip when she was 10, and then Ben and I went on a trip when he was 10 to Europe. Instead of saying it was going to be with both parents, because that ended up being impossible. The other thing I kind of regret is Andrew really wanted to go to Italy. There's Italy again. Andrew really did want to go to Italy, and I was, at the time, I think I was a little intimidated by that. I probably wouldn't have had reservations about it as much if my husband hadn't been influencing the decision. He had never traveled abroad. No, he hadn't. He went to Costa Rica on a trip, but that was after that. That was when I was pregnant with Ben. I think he'd been to Mexico once, but that was it. He had never been to Europe, and this was all new for him too. And so I think he was very much of the mind of, we need to go somewhere where they speak English, because he didn't have any other language skills at all. And I think he was a little intimidated about it. And I think I was also just thinking, like, I'm taking my young child. I'm very familiar with London because I had already lived there before. And so this will just be easier. And I regret that a little bit because I feel kind of bad that I didn't do what Andrew really wanted, which was Andrew wanted to go to Italy. I should have taken him to Italy, and I should have just taken him. But we ended up going to London, Andrew, me, and my husband. We had a really terrific trip. But if I could go back and do it again, I would have taken Andrew where he really wanted to go, which was to Italy, and I would have taken him just me. And then I would have made it a higher priority and really, really tried to save somehow. So I could have done the same thing with Megan when she was 10 and with Ben when he was 10, because I did not get to do that. But that was because then I was in the years after getting divorced, and I was struggling, to try to make ends meet as a single mom, and, working, teaching, and these young kids and everything like that. Never really got consistent child support. That goal I had of taking each kid when they were 10 just kind of fell away. We did always go somewhere when they were 10, but it was all of us. It was the four of us. I didn't get to do the individual travels, which brings me to the second part of this regret, which is that I wish I would have traveled with each of my kids individually more. And I don't know how I would have done that though, because I didn't have anybody to leave them with. Andrew did go to his dad's on a regular basis. He went to his dad's every other weekend, and he went to his dad's, we shared holidays, and he went to his dad's for 4 weeks every summer. Not 4 weeks in a block, but like 4 total weeks. And so he spent a significant time with his dad. So there was time, like, I could have probably taken Megan before Ben was born, but no, that even went, because Ben was born when Megan was 3. So I wasn't like trying to travel with the 2-year-old, and I was still married then. So I'm just not sure how I would have done it. I never felt comfortable enough to leave my kids with my parents for an extended period of time. And logistically, there were just too many challenges with that just never really would have worked. And the most recent place I regretted this was Andrew. It was his first study abroad in college. He went on a traveling study abroad to all French-speaking countries. He went to France, Morocco, France, and Belgium. He spent a significant amount of time in Paris. And then at the end, we were supposed to go to Ireland together. I had my plane ticket and everything. I remember this. And I ended up not going because I couldn't figure out what to do with Megan and Ben. They were little. I could have done it, but I just was uneasy about it. I just was uneasy with the situation, with how I would have been leaving them at home, and didn't really have anybody good to take care of them. And so that's something I regret, because Andrew did end up going to Ireland without me, and I didn't get to go. And that's the most recent example of how I didn't get to travel independently with one of my kids. Except for when I took Andrew on our Disney cruise, my very first cruise when he was 4 years old, and then Ben and I going on our Disney cruise last October, a year ago. Those are the only one-on-one international trips I have taken with my kids, or even flying anywhere. Yeah, even just flying. When Andrew was littler, I did travel with him quite a bit, but a lot of the time my dad was with us before I got married. And then Megan and I did take a lot of little one-on-one mommy-daughter trips when I was still married and my husband was there to watch Ben. But we only went to like the cities. Like her birthday's Memorial Day weekend usually, and so we went on a lot of little 3-day weekend mother-daughter trips to the cities, to the Twin Cities in Minnesota. But we never went on any big trip together. She and I have still never done that. So I've never done a big trip where we fly somewhere, just me and Megan. And I don't know how I would have. It wasn't like I could leave my toddler with my teenager, so here, teenage son, while you're 16 and a junior in high school, can you watch your, 4-year-old brother while I take your sister on some trip somewhere? That wasn't really practical. So I guess the overall regret of this one is that I did not find a way to take individual one-on-one trips with each of my kids more while they were younger. Maybe I will get to do those at sometimes in the future when they're adults, because now they're basically all adults, but I wish I could have done it when they were kids. So there you go. Those are my 3 top travel regrets, which interestingly are also quite significant life regrets, really. And there's kind of 2 takeaways from this that I want you to take away from this video. One is that those things are often linked. A travel regret is often very closely tied to life regrets. Like you won't realize until later how significant a decision about travel can really affect your life. You know what I mean? And then the second thing I want to point out, and this is the really big takeaway from this video, is that all of my travel regrets, and I'm betting yours too, have to do with travel I didn't get to do. It all has to do with trips I did not take. I have no travel regrets about travel I did do. I have never said, oh, wish I hadn't taken that trip, or oh, I wish I hadn't spent all that money on that trip. I've never said that ever in my life. I never feel that way, even if something went wrong. Even on this trip, when my dad basically died, okay, I still don't regret that trip. Obviously, you don't want bad things to happen when you travel, and sometimes your travel companion, like my ex-husband, is not the person you necessarily wanted to travel with, but I still have never regretted taking any trip I've taken in my life. None. I have never regretted a travel experience. I have never regretted taking the time. I have never regretted spending the money on travel, ever. But as this video shows you, I definitely have very big regrets about trips I did not take, about travel that I did not get to do, about time and money spent on those experiences with people that I love. So I hope that you'll think about this a little bit. And let me know in the comments if you have an experience like this where you have a big travel regret. And is it like mine, where it's something you didn't do? I'd be curious to hear about that in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you're all safe and well. Have a great day and safe travels.